Hey, welcome to Simply Rambling, the podcast where we're just gonna chat a little bit about topics and stuff. It's a little different than our regularly scheduled programming. But if you'd like to check that stuff out, check out the channel. But otherwise, this is just us hanging out on the couch.
Yeah, we got no specific goals. We're world builders, so we're probably gonna end up talking about it a little bit. But if you want a little break, you maybe aren't kept up on the storyline or whatever, maybe you don't care. You can still just listen to us chat here or whatever. Yeah.
So either way, welcome.
Thank you for joining us here on our comfy couch. If you're listening and not watching, imagine that we're sitting on a comfortable couch.
A pretty comfortable couch. Sorry, Cor. I'm kidding.
It's an old couch I got from my neighbors.
Yeah. It's better than my couch.
I know.
That's actually really
throwing couch shade in the first 3 minutes. Let's go. But either way, yeah. How you doing?
Not so bad. If you are watching, you may have noticed because I'm rocking no sleeves, but one of the big things in my world in the last little bit is I got a couple of tattoos that I've been thinking about getting for a very long time.
Yeah.
If you're listening and not watching, picture really cool tattoos. Just like that. Pretty cool, right?
They're exactly what you're picturing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about yourself?
Same old.
Same old.
Christmas is approaching.
Christmas. It do be approaching, as it always does. And I don't know how y'all are doing, but I have gotten one gift.
Yeah.
And not to date the episode, but it is December 20th.
Yeah.
So, yowzers. But that's... it's all part of being an adult.
Yeah, congratulations. You are 1,000,000% doing better than I am.
Really?
Yeah, no,
wow,
I am.
That actually does me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, because I am completely screwed, and every year I do this to myself.
And
every year I tell myself I'm just going to buy gifts in January.
Yeah.
And then I'll just go from there.
Yeah.
And then I never do. And I procrastinate for an entire year until here we are.
Well, it's so brutal because, like, Christmas, and this is for everybody, so I'm giving everybody out there a pre-built excuse. It's busy, man.
Yeah.
Like, spoiler alert, we have actual, like, in-person real, well, we work other jobs.
Yeah.
And so life is busy.
Yeah.
And when you've got obligations and adult chores and stuff like that, it can kind of just happen really quick where you're like, oh yeah, Christmas is a month away, and then you come back to reality and Christmas is 2 weeks away and you're like, I should get on gifts, and then by the time you start like really honing in on it, it's Christmas. And so basically keep everybody's expectations really low.
Yeah.
And say you'll get them when you get them.
Yeah, no, it's I mean,
Don't
it's
love
also
that.
I think it's also particularly brutal this year just because everything's so expensive here.
Very expensive.
Well, everywhere, I think. Like I don't think there's an area of the world where things haven't gotten more expensive.
Yeah.
God knows there's also a handful of unexpected expenses like every month for people too. So it's like it really just does eat away at everything you can possibly do.
Yeah. There's something to be said about, like, I don't know, I think when I first started having, like, adult money, I was overwhelmed by the fact that I have to spend a lot of that adult money on gifts for people.
Yeah.
And then pretty quickly I was like, I think spending money on people is still good and it's cool.
Yeah.
But there's definitely something to be said about, like, doing something that is maybe more, like, labor intensive or time intensive versus like money intensive.
Yeah.
And especially in a global recession.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're supposed to say that word on the tube.
Yeah.
But when money things are bad in the world, it definitely makes it a little bit less frightening when you just kind of do something rather than spending a ton of money.
Yeah, true. It's also you have to really put a lot of thought into that. It's like, what can you do someone that isn't just like general labor too, though? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's also a question. It's like you could also get somebody a card, but like there's also like stipulation on that. Just like a lot of people think it's like a cop out and everything like that. No matter how many nice words you write in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be the most heartfelt thing in the world, and then they're like, Yeah, but this says Dollarama on the back of it. It says Dollar Giant on it, so
Yeah.
I don't know how much
Get
you
out my
actually
house.
care about me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. But no, so short answer, I'm completely screwed for this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
it was-
that's fair.
It was
Well-
yeah, it was the moment my wife was like, "Oh yeah, so turn around because I'm bringing in your Christmas present." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
No.
Also, actually, you should turn around, and I'm gonna do something also over here too. I won't say what it is. It
Yeah.
may or may not even be Christmas related.
It's got to be. It's definitely going to be a
Surely
surprise.
it is. Yeah, it's a surprise for sure.
Oh yeah. but-
Surprise! It's nothing.
Yeah. Behold, 1 cubic meter
Yeah.
of oxygen. I
It's
got it
all
just for you.
yours.
Yeah.
Hey, one day
Yeah.
that's gonna be big. That's an investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hold on to that oxygen. We may run out at some point.
It is going to be a valuable resource someday.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When the water wars kick off.
Yeah,
You'll
exactly.
be wishing you had a cubic meter of oxygen, clean air.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Don't spend it all in one place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, as far as how I'm doing, yeah, it's been another week.
Yeah.
Eh,
Yeah. No,
I got
exactly.
I got some tattoos, but if you're watching, that's actually new to me. It may have only been a month since the last podcast, but it's been 27 and a half years for me. So I'm not doing this every week. It's a big thing.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah.
I feel like that's like not the curse of getting tattoos, but it kind of comes with it is the like, look.
Yeah, I know. You got to show off to everybody you possibly can.
I mean, that's kind of what it's for, though. You know what I
100%,
mean? It's like
100%,
literally, it's
yeah.
just like, wow, look at this cool thing I got.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's funny too, because like since they are open wounds,
yeah,
I've been especially like at work and stuff wearing long sleeves,
yeah,
and so that I don't get garbage on them or like injure them or whatever.
yeah. True.
But that also comes with there are some people that I've worked with like 15 times since then
Mm-hmm.
that haven't seen them, and then I show them off to somebody else, and they're like, "Wow, where did that come from?"
Yeah,
Oh yeah, sorry if I forgot.
Yeah.
My bad. But yeah, but showing them off is the point because they're expensive.
Yeah.
So showing them off, that's where you get your money's worth.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all the reactions. Yeah, no, I still not. I don't know, man. I can't just put something neat on myself. It's got to be something that like literally specifically like I won't mind looking at or will bring forth. Does it spark joy? And that's kind of the thing, is the fact that I'm such a liquid personality. I find a lot of the time that like the moment I know for a fact the moment I commit to an actual tattoo, I'm gonna put it on myself and then hate it immediately after, because I'm like, well, I'm not into this anymore.
Now you're obligated to like it, so you don't want to like it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I really did like the Xbox 360 for a while,
Yeah.
but now I'm onto new things, and like
The PlayStation 2.
yeah, exactly. Like the brand new console that just came out on December 20th, 2000 something. But yeah, exactly. It's just like I know there's nothing in my life that I actually am so committed to that I'm gonna be like I'm gonna put in
Not
the
even
image
your
of it.
wife?
No.
You heard it here first.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you heard it here first. I have commitment issues.
So, okay, now there's two ways I want to take that. There are things that you feel like sentimentally about that you think that you might get actually tattooed at some point, though, right?
I mean, theoretically, like, I mean, obviously, like, D&D is such a huge part of our life
For
now.
sure.
Like, thinking about it realistically, if it's not just like again, like a person, like a wife, just one of them. No. But for example, because that's handled in different ways. But if there was any, like, if it's going to be like a franchise or a piece of art or like something semi-abstract like that, like D&D is really the only thing I can actually think of that has been so
consistent.
consistent and enjoyed and like actually like absorbed so much of like parts of my life. You know what I mean? Because like me and you both DM, but like there's like so much time invested in just sitting there and thinking. Like this is really a thing, is the fact that like almost every night that I'm going to sleep, I'm trying to think about something about the world.
Yeah, I know. See, that's not only is that a really good time to get some stuff in your brain about it, but also is a really great time to completely lose all of it, because it actually puts me to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, I think I've mentioned this to you before. I do a lot of thinking as I'm trying to fall asleep about D&D stuff. And then I like... Let's say that I think about it for like 30 minutes before I fall asleep.
Yeah.
I have insomnia or something, by the way. So if you don't take 30 minutes to fall asleep, that's awesome. But it does take me minimum that long.
Yeah.
Takes me longer.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, insomnia sucks.
Yeah, it's not great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's also like 30 minutes minimum. That's that's the good
that's
day.
the entry level.
Yeah, that's the good day.
On a great day, I can conk out in 10 minutes, but
yeah, that's your 1 in 1,000. Yeah.
I have to be exhausted.
Yeah, fair enough. But either way.
So let's say that I think about it for 30 minutes before I fall asleep.
Yeah.
I can get a lot of thinking done in 30 minutes, but then I only remember, let's say, like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's the best 10 minutes of it. And then I kind of take that and I think another 30 minutes, and then that gets condensed again because I forget most of it. And that's kind of where I end up with a lot of my, like, cool, good stuff that really, really sticks, is because it took me 3 weeks of 30-minute plus falling asleep sessions, and then it's condensed down into, like, one idea.
Yeah.
But it's been thought about so much that, like, it's only
thought
the
about
best
and
essence.
rethought about and rethought about,
Yeah.
because you maybe that first session you get the twinkle of the idea, and so okay, you have something to start pulling on. And you start to, and maybe you get a little bit farther, but then you move back. It's like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But like you're covering that ground over and over and over again so much that it becomes well thought out.
You forget all the stuff that wasn't
Wasn't
dope
good.
and impactful to you, and you remember all the cool things. So all you're left with is 30 minutes worth of eureka moments, and it ends up being some of the best stuff.
Yeah. Well, this is also the thing too, is since sleep is like is when you dream. Duh. A lot of the most creative things will come out of you attempting to go to sleep. Like I heard about a musician one time. I don't remember who it was, and I'm sure someone will know. As I think he would basically, like, he would sit in like a chair or in his bed or something like that, and he would hold a key over top of a dish, and so he'd like sit there and like try and come up with stuff. But like the moment he would go to sleep, he would drop the key into the bowl or the dish, and it would make a noise that would wake him up, and then he would have that's when he would have a lot of his best musical ideas, and it truly is the same thing
100%.
no matter what thing you're trying to create.
I think that it's backed by science. I could be lying, but that like it's kind of that like transitionary state where you're like the most creative, because you're kind of like, you're still conscious enough to be thinking, but you're maybe not like held back by other things going on in your brain or whatever.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, is like one of the reason dreams are so wacky is because it, like, a lot of it's just your brain throwing ideas at the wall or trying to process information in a way that like your waking brain doesn't. Like, I mean, truly not a lot is known about dreams or what their actual technical function is, but as far as we can tell, like, yeah, like, people have weird freaking dreams, man, and it's like, so it's when you're in that state of trying to go to sleep, it is like this perfect in-between of, like, you have functional thoughts that actually have, like, at least a level of cohesion, but then the stuff that is really out there, like, on creativity's edge, that when you are fully dreaming, and especially if you're having a strange dream, like, it's not something you can use narratively because it just doesn't make any sense. It's like feeling more than thought. And so that in-between point is like where you get something cohesive, but that is creative. And yeah, so it is truly one of the best times. But also the trouble is, like you say, you forget it, like, so much.
But that's also, it's interesting because that's how we have and continue to describe good storytelling as well, is that it's all about the feeling rather than the like cohesive thought of it. like you can explain to somebody an entire story about what they see or whatever, but it's most impactful and most absorbed and most interesting when it's described to you in terms of feelings and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally. No, you're totally right there, because feeling is more powerful than thought. Like when it comes down to like how something is going to affect you, and so this is probably the true struggle as a DM is trying to get people to feel things rather than think things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, I guess that is probably why this sort of state of trying to come up with stuff while trying to go to sleep kind of gets you there sometimes. Is there anything in particular you can remember that you came up with when you were dreaming or not dreaming specifically, but like trying to go to sleep?
Some of it is going to be too big of spoilers to tell you about, because a lot of them are like dope moments that I plan on having be like a big deal, and so that means that unfortunately I can't share with you those things, because then they wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah.
But I will say that some of the characters that I'm the most happy with are from that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like not even necessarily like characters, but like NPCs and stuff.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was picturing. Yeah.
Or also like, I can say as well that like cities, some of the cities that I've built that you haven't seen.
Yeah. Okay.
Are things where I'm like, you know, I'm gearing up to go to sleep. I've put my phone down already, so you know I've committed.
Yeah.
And
alarms are on.
Yeah. I've had a good old glug or two of water.
Yeah.
But so I'll think like, yeah, and it's funny too, because like I do it intentionally to put me to sleep. I'm like, let's get my brain like just kind of meandering.
Yeah.
But I'll be okay. Let's kind of flesh out the city again. Like let's start where I started the last time. Like you walk in like this, that, whatever. This, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
As some would say.
Yeah.
And then I kind of think like, well, what are the things that you see immediately up front? What are the noticeable defining features?
Yeah.
And then like, I kind of go from there wherever my brain takes me.
You do like a Google Street View of your own place. Yeah.
And I then come back the next day and I'm like, let's start again at the front gate or whatever, but now I've got some things that are already kind of ironed out in my head.
Yeah.
And then I carry on again, but the stuff that came later when I was more falling asleep that wasn't as cool because it didn't stick, is gone. And then I'm like, well, let's keep going. And then I come up with something cool, and then that's in there now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess like you keep walking down the street and you kind of make a couple buildings, but then the next time you walk, those buildings are there in your head now, and so you can kind of focus on making a couple more.
And kind of the same with like characters as well, because I'll think like for even NPCs and stuff, I'll kind of think of like, what are they like? What are some things that they believe in? What are some interactions that they've maybe had? What are their past?
Yeah.
And then usually end up coming up with like certain things that are canon now, like things that have happened in the past, how they've reacted to them. And I think we've talked about this on an episode as well, but where you kind of have like these almost like key phrases that sort of like stand for or represent a character.
Okay.
And then you can kind of think of those things, and it reminds you of an aspect of that character.
Okay,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you have like anchor phrases.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like when we were talking about like the scenes of like making characters as well.
100%. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
That's an episode. We'll look for it. I think it's labeled appropriately, like making characters and stuff. But yeah, one thing we were talking about was the fact that like my favorite thing personally is to come up with a scene that kind of or a few that kind of define that character. But if you can also do that with like phrases and stuff like that, like you just said. So no, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely. It's probably my favorite thing to do when coming up with characters is coming up with those those little moments.
Yeah, because they feel like sort of key important moments that define them, and they're interesting and they're deep, and they represent the person and how they genuinely feel and react to things and stuff like that. So I think that they're fun and very good way to really flesh out and feel that character genuinely.
Again, going back to the feeling, because like I can think of like all of the character moments that I've come up with for characters, and most of them are to do with them feeling a certain way about a certain thing.
For sure.
So that does make a lot of sense. Yeah, that is cool. A cool method too is the idea of like kind of walking yourself through a city in order to do it.
Yeah, because I think like what I'm talking about is like if you stand yourself at the front gate, what do you see is kind of a good way to pick up like defining features that we've mentioned before. Because what is going to attract your attention first and foremost? And if something attracts your attention, then it's probably a kind of defining feature of the city.
Yeah.
And you can kind of expand from there. Like, oh, if you see 13 big bell towers or something like that, and you think that's really cool and you want to keep that in your city, then the bell towers become a big part of living in the city, right? So like maybe now you hear the bells as you walk around, and that's just a kind of thing for everyday life.
Yeah.
But then also because that's in everybody's like subconscious, their psyche.
Yeah.
You probably end up with places called, you know, in reference to the bells or whatever. Like things will imitate that, right?
Well, I mean, to kind of, I mean, I guess it's kind of a tad of a spoiler for you, but like, kind of not really, because it's just what this place is called. I've made a town that's sits on the coast, but it's called Mooringnell, and it was one of those happy little coincidences where I came up with the name and then kind of looked up what it meant. But I believe if I remember correctly, because I came up with it and then searched it up a while ago. But I think a knell was basically like a bell that was rung to do with when someone dies.
Interesting, I didn't know that.
And this place is basically where like they drop off a lot of dead sailors,
right.
Basically, because it's like it's a lot of those people who just don't have like families or anything, or don't have a place to be buried. They don't have any specific ties. They were just kind of an unnamed sailor, or maybe they were from somewhere else.
John Doe's.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
Yeah, exactly. And so this is a place where a lot of them get buried. Yeah. But literally just on the topic of like, yeah, this is the one defining feature you can think of when you go to this place, and so it has to do with the name.
Yeah, but then exactly from there you can kind of expand on that and get a vibe of it. Like, if it's made it into the name, like, is there like a bell sound that can be kind of heard in the background? Is like there a large because more also like you think docks and stuff like that. But is there like a big concentration of like graveyards? Are there a lot of other like random strangers that don't have like much for like an identity? Are there people that do services for these people? Like, is that like kind of a trade that exists here? Is people honoring the dead kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, that is really the thing, is it just starts to make you ask questions.
Totally.
This is kind of one of the really, really important pieces of how I think of the creative process when it comes down to D&D and something that kind of, I think, takes a lot of the pressure off as well at the same time. It allows your brain to move forward, is instead of trying to come up with something, ask yourself questions about it and then answer them as if you know the answer to the question. So yeah, like this is the thing, is like I brought up a single feature about this place and kind of and what it means, and that brings up like 12 questions.
Yeah, and then each of those questions can have another like 3 questions each kind of thing, and then you end up with a pretty thick looking town after a little while. Yeah.
Well, and I think it also is helpful because since you're questioning yourself, it kind of puts you in the position of the player and the DM at the same time, because the players are going to be asking you questions about your like where they are, and so it kind of already immediately preps you for that at the same time. And I know it, like coming up with something and then asking yourself a question and coming up with an answer is kind of the same thing, but I find it's just a way of framing the thought that actually makes the creative process a lot better. Is just asking yourself as if you're curious. Because I couldn't even tell you why. I couldn't even tell you why this works. It seems to change, flip a switch that just seems to make it a lot easier.
In fairness, I don't know if this is like this is probably a universal like DM experience, but I am curious about my own creations, and that's kind of what drives me to keep going. Like,
Yeah, true.
I come up with these like thoughts or whatever. I'm like, yeah, that's a cool idea. Like, and then I want to explore it more because I'm like, yeah, I wonder what's behind this crevice or whatever, and I want to keep diving into it because I'm curious about the vague idea of something that I've created, and that drives me to fill in those corners and explore it myself.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also another thing that, and it's not even just specifically locations too. I find it's actually even more helpful when it comes down to characters, because most of the time, like, I don't know, I feel like when I come up with a character, like, you start with a character concept, right? Like, and that character concept is probably less than fucking 2 sentences. It's like I don't know, the character. I keep bringing up this character, but it's because it's the character I've played the most, which is my character Murdoch. He's the fiend warlock. But what the whole concept, like literally the 1 sentence thing that I came up with that I wanted to work with, was basically like the idea of the deal with the devil, and this guy being the guy who gets people to sign those contracts and everything, and that was the concept. But again, that concept begs the question of, well, like many questions. I was like, okay, well, like, what class is he? And I was like, okay, well, you know, fiend, patron, warlock just made the most sense, so you just go with that. But then it just continues. Like, once you have that single little piece, and then you start to ask questions about it and kind of attack it from different angles, like, it's just, the stuff like lays itself out before you, I find. And I feel like that's, I don't know, that's the fun of the whole creative process, is asking those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so one of the characters that I am way into is short name Ash. That's all you need to know, because he also has like 20 something names. I've written them down and then forgotten them. A lot of names, but it is interesting, like, being kind of curious about what happens in this situation, and not only can that help you come up with the complex character, but then if you've got a complex character, way more fun to play, and also leads you to some interesting situations as well. Because this is, in classic Druid fashion, a big fan of like the Circle of Life and stuff like that, but almost more in the like respecting nature's cycles and food chain-esque than like everything deserves to live kind of thing. And it's kind of interesting when I'm playing him to have that balance of like, hey man, if you die, you are meant to die. Like, only the strong survive. But also like, but I kind of want to keep my friends alive. Like, I'm going to bend my rules a little bit for them. And then like, you bend the rule once and you start bending the rule more times for more people and stuff. But where do you draw the line? And then you ask yourself, where do I draw the line? Where is my character at now at this point in that like mental situation? You know what I mean?
Totally. And again, it's begging the questions. No kidding. So ask yourself questions. It's going to help with the process.
I mean, well, when you say like it's usually less than 2 sentences that you start with, I made my last character based on like what kind of things do I want to play with that seem exciting to me mechanics wise. And then I started looking at like the unique abilities of those, and then that gives you a lot of places to start fleshing your guy out from too, is like, how do those work mechanically? And this is no surprise, I think, to most people. That's kind of, I think, how a lot of people build their characters, but like, how does that work mechanically? For instance, my new one is Paladin and Echo Knight multiclass. And so the one like most interesting thing that started this whole spiral of character development in my head was, how the heck does like splitting your like, how does the echo work? And so that started kind of sending me down the like character development and thought process thing. And it was just from seeing like the one ability of one of these classes that ended up making an entire backstory for me, and like making this person's like, well, history and their psyche and their personality and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just based on the ability, or one like ability, right, from the class. Yeah.
Well, this is one thing I could mention as well, is because a lot of the time when I'm mentioning this process, like I do like to mention backstory. Like I think another thing in that sort of character creation episode that I had mentioned is like I kind of start with the backstory a lot of the time, but you really don't have to with this process either. Like you can ask mechanical questions first. Like it does work basically from all angles, and whatever sparks that single sentence or that single
whatever sparks joy.
that concept in the first place, like whether it's the idea of the deal with the devil or a specific mechanic that rests within a specific class that you want to play, I feel like the questions always lay themselves out before you. Like, exactly. Like Echo Knight. Oh, how does this Echo Knight mechanic work? Okay, why does that exist within this character?
Yeah, well, because like to me, that's a crazy power that like nobody else has. So like, where did he get it? And being that this is also a fighter class, I was like, yeah, that does seem strange. But they're also multi-classed paladins. So, okay, well, let's say that a vengeful god, like, split them, right? And this is kind of actually a part of them. And it's like a god level, like, punishment.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, why did the god punish them? What was their god that would make them so petty that they would do this? How is that going to make them feel? What repercussions does this have on their life that they can do this?
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like one ability, 94 questions.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, is you could have looked at it and been like, this ability, okay, how am I going to, like, you're trying to make something of it, but asking yourself why, or like asking yourself the question, leaves these questions to be asked, instead of like it relieves a lot of pressure, because like the moment you think, okay, I have to come up with the answer to this, rather than starting to just follow the simple path of questioning, sometimes it could even lead you to the same place, but it's just the pathway I find is easier there. But to do with the going back to the sleeping thing, one thing I actually wanted to mention as well is the fact that one thing I love and use frequently in pretty much any D&D thing I've done is dream sequences. I love dream sequences so much. And
it's just such a good time. Like, obviously, this is a joke. Yeah. But like, it's a time where you can make your character shut the hell up and listen to a specific thing. You know what I mean? Like, grab their head, focus.
Yeah.
You're in a dream. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
It's a joke, but it's funny.
It's kind of true at the same time, because
it does give you a chance to put them in like way unusual circumstances and not necessarily have to have like all the answers. This is how that happened, this is why. Now how do you react to it? It's like you're in a crazy situation. You know what I mean? You're in a completely different realm that I didn't have to get you there over 15 sessions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean? There's no travel time. And you can also, like regular dreams, throw in like nonsensical shit but have it like
and all your teeth fall out and you find $50 on the ground.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, exactly. And you're being chased.
Yeah.
But so this is kind of the funny thing, is a lot of the best dream sequences that I've come up with are often during these moments where I'm trying to go to sleep in real life, which I find to be somewhat ironic, but also like exactly on point at the same time, because I don't know, I feel like maybe the wackiness of trying to go to sleep or sleeping is more inclined to come to me at that exact time. But yeah, no, the dream sequence, like you say, like it is kind of a moment where you can tell your player, like, you know, watch this, pay attention to this, because like I mean, D&D is very much like this. It's like, okay, this, and this happens. What do you do? This, and this happens.
Yeah.
What do you do? But it becomes so much more focused in a dream sequence where,
Yeah.
like, because dreams happen to you, but sometimes your behavior in a dream is different than how you would act in real life too.
I think it's also like kind of a helpful tool for refocusing, because that's a time where you get to like a little bit role play as your characters, like your player characters' psyche, and be like, kind of almost don't forget that this is an important thing to your character, and this is what your like subconscious is feeling about it. You can do with that as what you will when you wake up.
Yeah.
But it's on your head, and here's what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, and also gives them, if there's something that you find has, how do you even phrase this? Like, if your player finds their character like kind of unfocused, like so, for example, I don't know, you have like a Pact of the Blade warlock or something like that, and they have a patron that is, you know, either good and they're an evil character, or evil and they're a good character, and they don't know how to feel about that. Oftentimes I find like what that can do, at least in like the D&D waking life, is like it leads to like a level of indecisiveness. You know what I mean? They're like, well, I'm using this power, but I don't like using this power. Like, I don't know. And so it can feel confusing in using it in the real life, in real D&D life, in real fake life.
Yeah.
But when you can put in a dream sequence, and it's kind of like, it's asking them that question in a very concentrated manner. Like, either their patron just visits them, or it's very, very clear and clearly symbolically there. How do you feel about this, and what are you going to do if it comes down to this or that? Like, what are you going to do? You don't have to try and manufacture it to happen in, again, like their waking life, because I feel like that's just going to feel cheap. But when you get into an instance where, like, again, your character has an internal conflict. You can lay that out symbolically or literally right in front of them in a dream sequence and ask them, how do you feel about this? And then maybe they remain indecisive, but it kind of resets in their brain, hey, this is an important decision you're having to make and are going to have to make. Or they choose yes or no. And then they wake up and the character is going to feel a little bit more focused. So it's such a good device, and
It
so
for sure
like
is,
and also as the DM, it's fun to just come up with crazy shit at the same time.
It is, to let yourself off the chain a little bit, and you don't have to necessarily follow all the rules that you made in your own world, because it's a dream, guys. So you can get crazy with it.
Yeah, just get silly, just get a little silly.
One thing that I wanted to, and you can also decide not to answer this here, because it's something that you may want to answer in like structured episodes. But we recently tickled upon the topic of what did you call it? Like character archetypes or player archetypes.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the archetypes of players?
Yeah, it is an interesting topic for sure. The player archetypes thing it's very helpful, but I find you shouldn't get fixated on it at the same time either, because like when it comes down to the player archetypes, I don't even remember all of them obviously, but like the one I always think of is Instigator, because it's just on the brain right now.
I love that one.
Yeah.
It's very nice to have an Instigator, because as we had mentioned in whatever episode or short it was, they're the ones who kind of push you into the situations and make action and keep things going, and also let you get away with some of the things that you didn't think you were going to be able to do.
Yeah, they are the cure for analysis paralysis.
For real. Yeah.
Like that is basically like if you were going to go with like the positive and negative side of the archetype, that is it. Is like they are the cure to that previously mentioned indecisiveness.
And as we are very aware, and a lot of you probably also are, a lot of time can not get wasted, but a lot of time gets spent at the table in decision paralysis, analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Where like at the end of a session, you could have spent an hour like humming and hawing about a plan, only to decide at the end like, now we're not doing that. We're going back to plan A, and then like that's still fun. You're still role playing and stuff, but it's a lot of time. It you can get more stuff done if you spend 25 minutes coming up with a plan that one of your characters knows is not gonna work, and then they do something goofy, and you're like, okay, back to plan A anyway, but now it's fun, creative, like, it can save you some time and get you into some situations that are interesting. And then also, if they are that kind that can sometimes maybe be a little bit like negative, where they're doing these things, but that it can get on the other character's nerves or whatever.
Well, because you like
then they
if
got
you
a
don't,
chance to grow into a positive instigator.
There's also the instance where like they just jump into everything without a plan.
Yes.
And like God knows, like you can get some real cool stuff out of planning in D&D.
Yeah, well, it's also like I don't want to doo-doo on like creating a plan or anything like that. Like that's still role playing. It's still enjoying the game in your own way.
Well, it's being creative.
It's being
like,
creative,
trying to come up with creative solutions.
100%. So there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Just saying, it can take a lot of time.
It's just as frustrating to understand that you've spent so much time on a plan and have it either fall through immediately or just realize that the simplest solution was the best one.
Yeah.
Cause, like you can sit there and try and be creative, but realistically, it was just a chair in the middle of the room. And you didn't need to investigate.
There's so many times. I'm sure that probably a lot of people watching or listening to this have watched or listened to Critical Role before, and there's so many times where they do that exact thing, where they plan or they talk about something for so long that doesn't really have any impact on like the story or anything like that, and then it doesn't work. It was just a chair. It was just a door. But all of them are too like, well, I won't say too, but they're all very professional and also very much like respect each other and don't want to terrorize each other's games. So they don't like obnoxiously instigate, right? And halt that for everybody without giving them a choice. But that does sometimes end up with the better majority of their 3.5 hour episodes or whatever. Like, guys, what do we do about this chair? Like, oh, it's so menacing. There's something wrong with it. And like the whole time Matt's like, you're doing what? All right.
And
keep going.
But well, realistically, this is a thing that happens to every party, though. Like it's 100%. It's not something exclusive to them by any means. No. But it is watching it happen in real time. And
we still enjoy it anyway. It's still fun to watch, and because I mean, at the end of the day, you're watching like, these 8 friends like just goofing and hanging out with each other, and that's what it's all about anyway, no matter what. But yeah, it is interesting watching, especially like when we have the power of like not hindsight maybe, but like not being in that moment there where we're
through
like
time wheel.
We know it's just a chair. And so watching them like really over analyze it, sometimes a little funny. Sometimes it could be a little frustrating, I'm sure, if you're not that kind of player where you don't want to sit there and chit-chat about something that doesn't need to be chit-chatted about.
Oh my God. Sorry, you're totally right, but it just struck me. Like, So, Corey, our man behind the camera, he's our local instigator.
I was gonna chime in and talk about how I instigate in basically every session, but I was waiting for a good gap to do it.
You definitely do. But the reason I just had to stop right there is because I realized that not only are you currently the instigator, but you actually always have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's so...
I don't really care about the consequences. I'll figure that shit out later.
No.
Makes for a fun story, and that's what the game is about at the end of the day.
And it's so funny because like I hadn't really put any thought into it, because I've been hyperfixating on like the archetypes a little bit, especially the instigator, because it was been pointed out that you were so much that I was like, oh man, like your latest character. I've been thinking of instances then, but I just thought of like semi-early in the first arc of my campaign, like you're just always the person who's just like, oh my god, shut up, let's just do this. And it literally resulted in your character losing an eye.
Yeah.
At their own accord. Like, there was literally a point where I made this sort of temple where there was 3 trials, and each trial required a sacrifice. The first sacrifice was blood.
Yeah.
The second sacrifice was a tooth. And then the third one was going to be an eye. And I have 3... There's 3 players.
It may have been tooth, blood, eye.
It was probably... Either way. Point being, the eye was the very, very last one. And so there's 3 players, and so I set this up intentionally so that hopefully like it was 1 and then 2 and then 3, but also it was kind of an instance where you guys you didn't realize until it became a pattern at 3 that, oh fuck, like all of these are going to be something increasingly bad.
Being like, as one of the players in that
exact
we definitely
moment,
didn't know it was going to be an eye. That is definitely a steep price to pay. But it's so funny that like, because it was tooth, and then Corey or Kos was like, oh yeah, I got it, whatever, no biggie.
Yeah.
And then the next one was blood. So like my tough guy fighter, who was also a Ninja Turtle, was like, blood, nothing. That's nothing to me. Check that out, whatever. Like blood. And then the next one was eye, and we're all like, turn to the third player, like,
your turn, I guess.
And then like there was a moment of hesitation, like, oh, an eye is actually a really steep price.
Yeah.
And then Kos comes back, I was like, whatever. Like, he just did the same move again.
Well, this
like,
was the thing. This was the...
Move on.
The analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
And then the instigator coming through and just being like, everyone shut up, we're finishing this off.
Yeah.
And it was just so... And it's so funny to think back to that exact instance and thinking of the instigator archetype because, like, yeah, it was such a true... moment of like, oh crap, this is such a steep price. And I even put there, and I was so willing for you guys to be able to cheat your way through it too.
Yeah.
Like if you guys had come up with some sort of creative solution or something like that, I totally would have let it slide.
Gotta be a thing in D&D. Like if you make only one very strict solution, you should expect to be there for a very long time, and it could be so long that it stops being fun.
Yeah.
So you have to be willing to accept what may have been wrong answers, as long as they are like narratively interesting, or they were like done with passion behind them or creativity behind them. You have to. I mean, sometimes it's fun to actually build these puzzles or whatever with no solution.
Yeah.
And then just let them do a couple of interesting things. Then you're like, yeah,
Deal.
you got it.
Yeah.
Like that was a cool enough, that was a creative enough solution.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, that was such a sick puzzle. Thanks, man. You did that.
I barely made anything.
Yeah.
I've heard the term "don't solve your own puzzles," and I think that's good advice sometimes, because I think there's also times where like a puzzle. I think it's kind of the difference between like a very technical puzzle and like puzzles that have like
a thematic puzzle.
A thematic puzzle or a metaphorical puzzle or something like that. Like those are so easy to not throw a actual technical solution into and then have people come up with answers because it's more abstract. But then if it's like a wiring puzzle or something like that, it's like it's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to cheat your way through that unless it's something to do with something technical. I'm sure
like there's certain circumstances where like they can via the power of their insane rolls and character moments and stuff, like brute force their way through it. But there's definitely something to be said about like, especially if you get like, if you go all high budget on them, high effort, and you like bring a physical thing that they can interact with to the table.
Yeah.
A couple of those in the works. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But like that's super interesting, and also not necessarily the thing that you can come up with your own solution for if you've got this puzzle cube in front of you or something.
You can't creatively solve a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unless like you start peeling the stickers off, right? Putting them back on. But
well, this is kind of the thing though, is like that's also again another sort of creative but technical solution. But to do with this eye thing, like I was open to to so much, whether like I don't know if it was like you guys created the illusion of the eye or like you carved it, like I don't know, just like just shooting out of nowhere like something similar that would have made it work. And because it was such a steep price, I was so willing to let that happen.
Yeah, and this was also, for the record, pretty early on in the campaign too, so like it would have been an interesting situation for you to get in there and be like, yeah, man, how do I solve this puzzle? And then like come up with your own creative ways that can kind of help you learn your own character a little bit more as well.
Also to the point of...
That's how we learned a little bit about Kos, was that man crazy and he's willing to get the job done. So...
Well, what's also incredible about that being very early in the campaign, like that was our first dungeon, effectively.
Yeah, and it was like second session or something, right? Like it was close.
It was
2 or 3.
It was probably it was within the first 5, like 5 being like the very latest it could have been.
But also that was my first D&D game.
Yeah.
Like I had basically no experience with the game at all.
Yeah, and ever since, you've been that sort of person. And this is the other thing to do with it being so early, is also understanding that such harsh consequences are going to continue to be consequences. Like, your character loses an arm in the final session. It's like, oh man, guess we'll solve that in the prologue. Or not the prologue.
Epilogue.
The epilogue. Oh, shucks, but it's like kind of not a big deal because you don't care because you're not going to play them anymore. You're not going to have to worry about that. But since it's so early, it's like, oh no, this is going to be a problem for a long time.
Your first note on your character sheet that you obviously use paper character sheets.
Yeah.
This is not a stance. I use the app. I use paper.
Yeah.
But your first note is, I have one eye now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But either way, so yeah, it had just occurred to me that this isn't something you developed over time as you became familiar with the game. You came out the gate ready to just like get shit done, and it's such a funny thing to actually think of all the instances where it's just like Kos as a character has been like, everyone shut up, let's just do this. Like let's go. Whether it's like chopping out your own eyeball to be like, well, we got to move forward, guys, and we can't just sit here thinking about it. And it was even funny because my wife, who was playing the character who like all of the pressure was on to like, it's your turn. You're the one who's gonna have to lose the eye, and she's like, oh God, no! How do I make this decision? Oh, should I do it? Should I not do it? I don't know. What do you guys think? And they're like, well, we don't know. We can't make that. And so she's sitting about it, thinking about it, and then you just finished it up. And then like after the session, she was like, I should have done it.
Yeah,
it would have been so cool if I had just done it. But it's like,
Well, yeah, because wasn't she saying that because she was a rogue, and she was like, man, a one-eye rogue would be kind of badass.
Yeah, it would be kind of cool.
Meanwhile, I'm a gunslinger, and I'm like, I only really need my right eye.
Yeah.
Well, this was also the thing, is okay, so she's a rogue warlock multi-class, and her warlock, like, I've mentioned that I like to give, like, especially deities and stuff, like, multiple names, because it makes them feel a little bit more, like, omniscient and godlike. But one of the nicknames of him is the Blind Man. Like blindness is such a thing and a theme within the patron of her patron that it would have like also kind of fit. And so she was like, man, should have done it.
It's not too late. You can just do it still.
Yeah, I could just stab out her eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give us another eye puzzle, I do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, with a totally fresh character, though, too. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Or Kos comes back out of nowhere, hops in, digs out his other eye, and then pieces out again. Who is this man?
Yeah. Why are you like this?
Yeah. But this is also, if you've seen the... I think this one was probably a short that I mentioned this story. Where... So, same player, Corey, who came up to this, like, in my opinion, obvious Fey trap that I wrote in, hoping they would go in so that I can explore some of that fun stuff, but knowing there's, like, no shot. And everybody gets to this thing, and they see it, and they're like, that's a trap. There's no shot that this, like, suspiciously doorway-shaped, like, nature-infused path in, like, this very notably like specific and unique, and also you stop to talk about it like place, there's no way that that's nothing, right?
Yeah.
And then you're all like, that's a trap, right? And he goes right through, allowing me to explore some more of the stuff that I wanted to see. So, yeah, shout out to your instigators out in the party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're a fun bunch to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Don't have too many of us.
Where is
It's all fun and games till somebody loses an eye.
where is? Do you have the PHB like lying around here somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on.
Wait,
Is that? No, don't worry about it. Oh, is that it right there? No, that's the Dungeon Master's Guide. Stop. I just completely forget what the other ones are right now, so I just want the reference.
Yeah, we've been talking about instigators for a minute. Let's see what the other ones are.
Let's see. Or no, it's not in the PHB. It is
Well,
in
they
the
have
actual
sort
Dungeon
of, like-
Master's Guide.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's totally.
Yeah,
in
you're
the
right.
DMG.
Yeah.
The Dung.
Run DMG.
Don't mind me. Where is it? Let's see here.
Because I think at the very least they talk about like player style, know your players.
Know your players.
The things that they can do.
Yeah, so let's
So
see.
there's instigating as one of them.
What do we got? Number 1, the actor.
Yeah.
Otherwise
Yeah.
known as acting. This is what I thought I would be. When I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, I thought, for sure, I am going to be the person who loves to RP and loves to come up with, just have conversations
Yeah.
with NPCs. And it truly does show. Not my first character I ever made, because that was more like made to be just like a one-shot or a quick couple session thing to get me familiar with the game. So they were just like, my original DM was just like, oh, you know, fighter's like kind of an easy class. So he was originally a fighter. But who that character turned into, the second time I was like, okay, I'm a little bit more familiar. I'm going to make something that I want to make. I made a Dragonborn Bard. And I made the Bard specifically with the intent of being like a charisma class, something who's fun to play, to talk to NPCs with, and stuff like that. And I got to play that character a little bit. You had mentioned it in one of the shorts, because he was ridiculously tall. He was like 7'10". Again, I was like stretching my creative muscles and like trying to push the boundaries on what I could kind of come up with as a character.
I'm still taller.
In real life.
Yeah. And but yeah, so I was playing around with that and had a bit of fun with it for sure, but as I've played D&D more and more, it's made me realize how much I'm actually into the combat, which is so weird because it's kind of like almost the polar opposite archetype.
Yeah. Yeah. I love both.
Yeah, I can't say I dislike one or the
Yeah.
other. It's just so interesting how much it shifted.
I can't help. Maybe this is a DM thing, but I can't help that I've got a strategic mind, and I like thinking about things to do in combat.
Yeah.
I like coming up with the ways to maximize the efficiency of my spells and stuff like that. Like, how do I make these dudes line up in a straight line so that I can thunderbolt their ass?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I like thinking about that kind of stuff. I love RPing as well. I think it's
Yeah.
very fun. I think it needs to be in the game for me to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, maybe not as much as I would have thought, being born and raised a theater kid and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, no kidding. Both of us. Yeah,
yeah.
both of us theater kids, if you couldn't tell. But yeah, exactly. It's just so interesting to me. I think part of it is the fact that combat really is where the mechanics shine through.
Yeah.
Because like in RP, you may have persuasion, deception checks, etc., but realistically, all of it is D20 add number. You know, oh, you wanna lie to this guy, it's D20 add number. Oh, you wanna convince this person, it's D20 add number. But when you're in combat, you get to bust out, firstly, all the different types of dice.
Yeah, all the shiny click-clacks you've been collecting.
Yeah,
you
the
finally get to
little
roll
funny
them.
rocks.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you get to bust those out, and you get to roll multiple at once, and sometimes that's dependent on, you know, how well you do, especially
Yeah.
rogue. It's like, oh, it's all you arguing how you need to get sneak attack based on this, that, and the other thing. But so you get to flex the mechanics of the game way more, and I think that's probably part of the reason why, like, I feel like you say, you kind of can't help but want to screw around with it a lot more.
And that's where, like, because you play the game and you can role play for 180 hours during this campaign, but every time you level up, you're getting new things that are mostly impacting your combat.
Yeah, also a good
So that's
point.
when you get to try out all the stuff you've earned.
But this is the thing, is like you said, you wouldn't enjoy the game if it was purely that at the same time, because also
If I'm gonna, like, hey, I'm gonna keep it real. If there's no role playing in a campaign that I'm playing, I'll go play Warhammer.
Yeah.
Because then I get to roll more dice.
Yeah.
And I get to do my strategy.
more
things.
clickety-clackety.
Yeah. So yeah, there needs to be a little bit of both. But yeah, I definitely kind of in the same boat. Like, I would have assumed when first hearing about Dungeons and Dragons that I would be all for the role play.
Yeah.
I like it all, you know?
Yeah.
Little
No, of
balance.
course, and yeah, like especially someone who practices Dungeon Master and also as a character. I feel like again, we say these archetypes like someone's going to be one, but realistically, everyone's everything.
Yeah, you got a little pie chart thing going on, or whatever that one with the overlapping circles is.
Venn diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be in there somewhere. There's very few people out there that don't care at all about any of the other aspects of the game and only like this thing. But the one that you find yourself more in than the other people at the table is the category you get chucked in.
And it is also kind of fun to figure out who in a group is the one of the one of the other. But this is the thing, though, is like you said, yeah, you wouldn't enjoy it without having the role play. And I think part of the reason for that is, firstly, number one, having a reason to be in combat.
Yep.
And that can really only be discussed narratively.
Yeah.
You can give someone a quick synopsis on why they're there, but that's not going to be super satisfying.
Yeah.
You discussing with the person who gives you the quest, you negotiating with the guards so that you can actually slip past a combat encounter isn't satisfying and get to the big boss a little bit quicker. You having these emotional discussions about why you're so invested in why this plot is important to you or your character. These are the things that make combat not to me a 7, but a 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But also, secondly, it gives your brain a little bit of a break or a little bit of a shifting gears from this constant strategization, and it allows you to kind of relax or like have a little bit of fun or be a little bit funny with your friends at the same time. And so having this one and the other sort of thing, it creates, I think, a more full and complete experience.
Yeah, and you don't get those satisfyingly fleshed out real life feeling characters if you completely sidestep all role playing. That's where most of your character really blossoms from. Blossom also being one of the names of my character I'm playing. One of the 20.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where you find out the most about your character. Like, I think in an end game epic level fight, I think you find out a lot about your character.
Yeah,
When
definitely.
people start dying around you and stuff like that, you find out some stuff about your character pretty quick. But outside of that, you definitely learn the most when you're put in strange role-playing situations, or even if you're just like role-playing after a big day and everybody goes to the tavern and gets some drinks.
Yeah.
You know? Or play games. Play games. When you get to the tavern, play some games.
Yeah.
Make your characters, make your other players divulge some details via games.
Yeah. Or literally bust out Go Fish in the middle of a moment like someone I know.
Yeah.
I was about to mention that.
Yeah.
You know, the funny thing is, like, I thought I was gonna absolutely hate role playing when I started playing D&D.
Excellent point. Yeah, no, that was true.
I've never been a theater kid, and when I played my old man gnome Arlen, that's when I was like, oh god, I love this.
Yeah.
This is great.
You're now an honorary theater kid, so welcome.
Yeah.
Why, thank you.
Welcome to the bunch.
It was fun to play Go Fish with your wife while you shopped in a magic store.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so the actor this is the thing about the actor archetype, is the person who's so willing to do that also takes a lot of the pressure on doing it off of people, because like, yeah, D&D in its finest is a fun balance between the role play moments and the combat moments. But people are going to enjoy one or the other or both in their own separate mixes. And so having someone in your group who really does just revel in that, but also is thankfully willing to enjoy combat and stuff as well. You really don't want someone who's really, really hard-lined into one or the other. But having the person who's kind of willing to like step up and do that constantly, like the true like bard player.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who's
the face.
Yeah.
The face of your group.
The face character, exactly. Who's willing to, when no one else feels like stepping in.
Yeah.
And role playing with the DM to be able to do so is such a relief to the rest of the players.
Speaking of, it's funny to me, across multiple characters, I've actually learned something about myself.
Yeah.
And about the characters that I create.
Yeah.
Is that I have a hard time dealing with characters that feel like they have so much authority over me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Guards who don't want to talk and only want me to listen to them.
Yeah.
I don't do well with it turns out, and neither do my characters, because I make characters that apparently feel the same way about authority that I do. So while I find myself currently being kind of like the face of the group, I can't get us out of that, guys, because I'm not going to deal with it well. So somebody with a -1 charisma, give it a shot, because I'm going to shit talk them and stuff. And
no one in particular, hey.
And I've seen this happen multiple times. It's not even the most recent situation that I'm thinking. Well, I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But it's happened multiple times, and I've learned that and observed that about me and the characters that I build.
That is actually truly the most bizarre thing about playing D&D, is actually learning things about yourself.
Yeah.
Because like when you're this is the thing, is a lot of the time people will say your first character is a reflection of yourself, and actually in a lot of cases that can be true. It's not true 100% of the time, so don't like read too much into it. But
I'm absolutely an instigator.
yeah.
My first character was Eric the Cleric. I hope I'm not like that, because that guy sucked. That guy was boring.
He was
But
a
also,
cleric.
I've made extra headcanon for that character going forward if they ever come back.
Yeah, well, and I mean, truly, my 7'10" Dragonborn character was kind of me at the time, because like he was basically Lab Theater Kid, who, you know, played guitar or lute or whatever. Like that was very much me, except in an instance where I could be even more loud and annoying. Oh, grab it.
Don't mind me.
Yeah. And so I see that a lot. But yeah, like it's you can learn so much about yourself in playing D&D. It's actually like such a fascinating thing. Like you're like, oh, do I actually have a problem with authority? And like, yeah, you weirdly learn like secret hidden knowledge about yourself, because like your characters, no matter how different they are from you, when you're manifesting a character, you're kind of tapping into that part of yourself. Whether like if they have the exact opposite personality of you, you are manifesting yourself in the opposite personality. And so all of a sudden, like once you start to play 2, 3, 5 characters or more, there's going to be through lines that you didn't notice. Like there's going to be things that are consistent. You're like, no, whether I play a good cleric, evil warlock, noble paladin, there's always these things that seem to surface about me.
They're always allergic to tomatoes.
Yeah, every single time. Yeah. That's actually... you have the book open like you want to ask something, but one real funny thing. When making a character, try and... it's kind of fun to think about little trivial things that kind of make them... it makes them feel a little more real.
100%.
And one thing I came up with a little while ago is try and figure out what allergies your character has. Because almost everyone has some sort of allergy, whether they know it or not. Or, it's, you know, some people don't, and that can be your answer as well. But... the idea that your character has to avoid something or die, it doesn't even have to be a food allergy or something. It could be cats. or like something like that. But having something like that actually makes the world feel a lot more real, because it's something trivial about your character, but it's also, now that it's something important, you will notice that thing existing in the world so much more. Like having to walk into a restaurant and say, so I'm allergic to tomatoes.
Yeah.
I'm gluten intolerant.
Yeah.
I can't touch mahogany wood specifically. What
your
the hell?
character, every time they touch mahogany, they have to touch it a second time as well.
Yeah.
Your character might have OCD.
Yeah.
And that's all right.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting character expanding thing.
Yeah, totally. So if anyone's listening to this, throw a few allergies on your character and let me know what they are, and if they actually come up, I am dying to know about it.
So one of the other things, speaking of, is the Explorer, and God bless the Explorer.
Yeah.
Because as DMs,
the Explorer's the DM's friend.
Yeah,
and
because
foe, but friend mostly.
Yeah, the unprepared DM's worst nightmare. Oh man,
I thought
potentially.
that was anytime somebody asked about a history book.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm pumped. Yeah,
I mean, that would kind of file under
DM's best friend.
Yeah, that kind of files under Explorer though,
Yeah.
because whether you're exploring a physical space or the history of the world, I feel like it's really the same thing.
Explorers desire exploration, want to experience the wonders that the fantasy world has to offer. We love that. That can be books, history, your lore, actually the places you've built. As well as it also says they like to find hidden clues and treasure. Who doesn't love to find treasure?
Yeah.
Loot goblins have kind of been their own tertiary
subcategory.
Who doesn't love loot though? There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But exploring in general, DM's best friend or worst nightmare, depending on how much time you actually had to consider this spot before they got there.
Yeah.
Depends on if you've been keeping up on all of our helpful tips and pointers.
Yeah. The Explorer is both the unprepared DM and the railroading DM's worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, what's over here? Well, no, you should go over here. I don't give a shit what I should do. I want to go over here.
Yeah.
And that can lead to its problems as well. But yeah, it also leads to you discovering things.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have you laid out a piece of either, like you say, cool lore that isn't really going to be shared in any other context, or
we've really let this
this poor blanket
slide.
A real cool piece of lore that isn't going to make sense in any other context, but you spent some time coming up with it because it's neat. Or even worse yet, they don't discover something that's really cool and important to the character or one of the characters within the party that would have been an excellent narrative or character-based discovery that they just gloss over because they're tunnel visioned.
Yeah.
That is the Explorer's bread and butter, there's two doors. I'm not picking one, I'm picking both.
Yeah.
I don't care if the knight in front and the other knight only tell truth or lies. I'm trying both.
Yeah. One of them will kill you instantly, and the other one's going to say that they won't kill you instantly, but they will.
Yeah.
And I'm going to open both doors.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so it truly is. It flexes so much on the DM, the Explorer, because you need to be able to lay those things out for them to discover.
Yeah.
But you also need to... The Explorer sometimes, I think, needs to tamp down, you can kind of end up with... it's kind of similar to the analysis paralysis thing.
Yeah.
But you sit there and try and find things that are just merely not there.
Yeah. I love it when people see more of my world because I put a lot of time and effort and thought into it. So I love showing it off. But then it can also muddle what the important aspects are, what actually does mean something, and what is merely just a bush. But, not that that's necessarily a problem, because it makes the world feel more full, but then that's how you end up with the sessions that you get 10 minutes worth of actual stuff done in 3 hours.
Yeah.
But hey, if you're enjoying it, then that's what's important. That's what's important about the game in general, is that you're enjoying it, and yeah,
no, totally.
That's what it's for.
The Explorer is such a such a necessary, but yeah, I feel like them as an archetype, we need to, I feel like when you have an explorer, they need to know they're an explorer.
Yeah.
So in those instances where you're like, dude, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
Like you have, they have the ability to understand and move forward.
Yeah.
Who's
So,
next?
well-
we covered Instigator Boy.
I think
He was an Instigator Boy.
the
Said see you later, boy.
nice. Did you know that she was replaced by a robot? I'm just kidding. I don't have a stance on that.
Yeah. Also, birds aren't real.
The flip side of the coin of the actor, I feel like, is kind of the optimizer.
Oh yeah.
And there's also, again, I'll preface with there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Because that is a part of the game. But the
Oh
optimizer...
no, this is the thing is each of these archetypes actually they're an archetype. They have a positive and negative aspect
100%.
to them. 100%. Yeah.
But the optimizer is a player who likes optimizing the character's abilities and fine-tune their characters for peak combat performance by gaining levels, new features, magic items, etc., etc. That's part of the game. It's very satisfying, and it also lets you build the character the way that you wanted, and it lets you get the thing out of the game that you wanted, which typically is combat if you're an optimizer.
Yeah.
But I get it. It is satisfying seeing the dice go whoosh.
Yeah.
And
Dice go burr.
Dice go burr. And hitting big numbers and getting things and seeing the numbers go up. Super satisfying.
I feel like the bad thing is they can often crush anyone's attempt at balance.
For sure. And I guess like in a specific example, it can be really tough if you have like somebody who has optimized and people who are just there for goofing, and then you get in a combat situation where you have now kind of like rebalanced a little bit, and you're hitting them for 32s and they're shrugging it off, but then a 32 annihilates instantly one of your characters that likes to roleplay a little bit more, you know?
Yeah. Well, this is exactly what I mean. Is like when you don't have, when you have someone who optimizes like turbo hard and the remainder of the players don't, like it can cause a bit of a problem. Now, if in an ideal world, if you're in that situation, the optimizer will actually assist your other players in kind of being like, oh, well, okay, well, you like when they're leveling up, obviously not in a forceful way, but making helpful suggestions that are like, oh, well, you actually could combo these two things and it would be brutal. Or, hey, in the perfect world, the optimizer is also optimizing the teamwork of your team. Again, not in a forceful way, like you have to choose this because I want this. Like that's not what I mean.
Like, hey, you get a feat this level. You know, I noticed that you were struggling with this in your thing or whatever. Have you considered that this perk actually fills in that gap very nicely or whatever, or accentuates this strength that you like about your character?
Yeah.
That's a very helpful optimizer. We love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely a good side and a bad side, but again, hey, if they're enjoying it and it's not actively hurting your table and your other players' experiences, cool.
Yeah, well, this is the thing is I think what to take away from the positive and negative aspects of each of these archetypes is because like we said, you are all of them. You will
to
favor
some degree, absolutely.
You will favor some and you will not favor others, but realistically, you are going to do each and every one of these things within D&D, and so therefore you are going to at some point be all of these things. Now, what I think to take away from acknowledging the positive and negative aspects of each and every one of them is in the instance where you are going to be one of these, choose to be the positive end of the archetype on this.
Yeah.
Like I say, if you truly identify yourself as the optimizer, understand the positive aspects and positive things an optimizer can bring to the table. Like we say, your ability to make helpful suggestions if someone is truly falling behind when it comes down to the power of their character. And I do mean helpful suggestions.
Yeah.
I don't mean fucking tell someone what to do.
Yeah. No, they don't need to take Lucky. They don't need to take Polearm Master.
Yeah.
Like, they don't need Sentinel.
Or if they don't want to, even if it is optimal.
Yeah, but...
You don't need to force that decision. But being the person who other people can lean on when they don't understand how to make their character more powerful and want to, you are the shining star in that exact moment.
Yeah, because if it comes time for level up and they're like, oh man, like I can't make up my mind. This sounds so good, but also this like sounds like it would be really helpful for this thing that like I enjoy doing or whatever. Then hey, bust down the stats for them if that's what they're interested in. If they want to make an informed decision, that's the perfect time for an optimizer to peek their little head out and offer the knowledge that they have.
Yeah, no, you're totally right there. You're totally right. But yeah, so just anytime you're trying to do something and you're like, this is the instigator that I'm being right now. How do you be the good instigator? And just try and keep these things in mind, because it'll make everyone at your table, firstly, like you more, probably.
Is instigating, in this case, taking away other people's initiative to do their own things and impact the game? If so, maybe don't do it. Maybe pitch the idea. Maybe give them a few minutes to role play first before you
wait
do
another
it.
20 minutes for the plan to fall through and then do it.
If you're more of the actor, just remember that other people need a little bit of the time in the spotlight as well. It's great that you're role playing and taking the initiative to keep the dialogue going and stuff like that. But the quiet players at the table also need a chance to have their voice heard.
Yeah, well, the actual best part of the actor is the ability to pull those quiet players when
out of their shell a little.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's not in a forceful way. This is the thing, is you can turn the positive aspect into negative very quickly. So it's an all in moderation sort of thing. But yeah, you can all of a sudden, as the actor and someone who's way more fluent in this sort of thing, be like, go to the quiet player and ask them questions about like, in the moment, or even just be like, oh yeah, no, this is a thing that I think your character is actually kind of an expert at. How do you feel about this situation? And trying to actually bring the dialogue to everyone at the table
100%.
Instead of yourself. Like that's where an actor will actually shine. What else do we got here?
Let's open this bad boy back up.
Crack open the tomb. The
So you guys know we're on 21% battery.
Yeah.
Sounds good. What do we have for time?
An hour 22.
Yeah, I
Okay, we
figured
should
it was
wrap it
about
up
that.
at some point then. But
I figure let's cover the rest.
Yeah.
Of these. What else do we got?
we've got. I mean, I feel like this will kind of.
I mean, storytelling. That I feel like that's kind of going to be in the actor a little bit.
We covered
there's
that,
a certain...
I think, kind of a little bit in the actor and the instigator, kind of. But the storyteller is players who love storytelling and want to contribute to a narrative. They like it when their characters are heavily invested in an unfolding story, and they enjoy encounters that are tied to and expand an overarching plot.
I mean, yeah, I think we did cover this in the actor a little bit, but a certain amount of these are going to have like levels of crossing over and stuff like that. But I feel more that the storyteller, rather than being invested in dialogue, is going to be invested in the stakes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can sit there and talk to people all day, but realistically, if it's about nothing, it's small talk.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like when it comes down to the storyteller, the best parts about the storyteller is the fact that they are going to ask the questions that are on point. You know what I mean? The storyteller is going to try and make sure that like I said, the best part about dialogue in D&D and like dealing with NPCs and quests is the fact that you have a reason to be there. And so I think the storyteller in any instance is going to be the person also most likely to become emotionally invested. And that when you become emotionally invested, you're more than likely going to tug everyone along who's like, maybe if they're at 50%, maybe they'll get up to like 70% invested. But I mean, also at the same time, like sometimes you just need a shopping episode, man.
This is true. This is true. You need a little break. Yeah, from doing story. Sometimes you need to take a break, sit at a tavern, have a chit chat, refresh your potions, take a look at what you got in your bag of holding. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, exactly. No, definitely.
We've also got the problem solver.
Yeah, the puzzler.
Yes. the puzzler, the no-name brand of that one character from that superhero thing.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that, but the puzzler, yeah. Answer me these puzzles 3.
Yeah. Man, this is kind of the thing, is like people on D&D puzzles are a divisive topic rather, because I find that like Man, puzzles are hard to do in D&D. I think partially, like, one of the biggest things I find that make puzzles difficult in D&D is the fact that you are working in the theater of the mind a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so, like, trying to get someone to, again, bringing back the Rubik's Cube example, trying to describe to someone the colors on a Rubik's Cube, and then trying to get them to solve it with mere description.
Oh yeah, well, I'll turn the top one left 3 times and then rotate the object 1.5 times in my hands, and then I'm going to flip the top row again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It becomes difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's a bit of an extreme example, but the difficulty trying to solve a physical puzzle while it is merely being described to you it's so easy to miss pieces.
Yeah. I think the puzzle of, like, your plot is a little bit easier. Like, maybe not
narrative
easier,
things or metaphorical things.
Yeah, when, you know, this person maybe is also potentially the note taker or something like that.
Yeah.
But they're the person who is more likely going to catch on to secrets and plot things, devices, and also is maybe going to get some of your important plot hooks that you want them to bite onto.
I feel like that's also the storyteller. It really does depend on exactly what ratio they're dipping into on each of these. But yeah, you're right still. The being invested in the plot and solving the puzzles within the plot are kind of 2 different things, but also I feel like you're going
games.
Yeah, you're going to find both of those archetypes within the same person more often than not, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, D&D puzzles are hard sometimes.
For sure. They're hard to build. Like, I find it tough to make puzzles that are, like, engaging but also are impossible to spoil by describing them.
Yeah, true.
Because, like, if you're like, oh, here's this sick puzzle I came up with, there's 2 levers on your left, and they're like, levers, I pull the lever, and you're like, yeah, that was the answer.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, like, obviously a very, very simple example, but I know exactly what you mean, because you're going to if there's something that's supposed to be hidden, any semi-experienced D&D player is going to know that something is relevant because you described it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily everything, like a chair in the middle of a room, for example. Sometimes it's just a set piece. But when you know there's something you're supposed to find or a puzzle you're supposed to solve, it's difficult not to give everything away at once.
Yeah.
And, like, it's this careful drip feed of information.
It's also kind of on the flip side of it too, like, it's pretty clear to a lot of players that what wasn't described the first time, but is described the second time, is important as well.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I walk into a very plain room. Hey, I look around the room. There's a rug. Rug's important.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I find D&D puzzles so hard. It's something like even
that's
Googling,
a challenge. Yeah, to make...
even Googling them and then because I'm just the kind of person who, like, sometimes, like, I don't want to just straight up take something.
Yeah.
I will try and take something and I'll make it at least slightly different so that I had some creative input at the very least. Like, even in a rush, I've got to change the Rubik's Cube's colors, like something like that. But yeah, like, even going on the internet and looking for D&D puzzles, a lot of the time they're so specific to a context too and hard to change.
Yeah.
Or it's just D&D puzzles, man. They're hard.
They're tough.
They're so hard to come up with something creative, and this is the problem too. And like, a lot of the time, anything you make that isn't, like, kindergarten level is very hard, and anything you make kindergarten level is easy. It's trying to make a satisfying puzzle that takes them a few minutes. It takes them 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour maybe, to kind of, like, put the thought in, discuss, and then come out the other end. Yeah, it's such a fine line, and part of it's knowing your players, because some people just aren't going to be as good at D&D puzzles as others, and just part of it is fucking luck of the day. It's such a tough thing. Yeah. So puzzle solvers, you've really got a bad hand when it comes down to the stuff you've got to figure out.
It's tough to satisfy the puzzle solvers. Like, narrative puzzles and like finding the stories in your plot and stuff like that is something else, because that is something that I think we all aim to have, is those reveals and stuff, and these are the people that are going to find them more likely. But the actual physical puzzles, the make you thinkers,
Yeah.
those are genuinely tough to come up with regularly and satisfyingly to provide to these players.
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah.
totally right. If any of you have a resource that gives very good puzzles, you're going to have to share that. Because,
Don't say Chat GPT.
Yeah. Yeah, it's or if any of you have any really good puzzles, we would love to hear them in the comments.
Yeah,
Because
actually, for real. Yeah, toss your puzzles down below.
Yeah, because man, it's something it's probably one of the things I struggle with the most. But
Yeah.
I also find it so necessary because I also don't want RP combat, combat,
For
RP,
sure,
RP.
for sure.
Like I don't want it to be this sort of binary sort of thing.
Yeah.
You need to. I want there to be variety in there, and so that it feels like again you're experiencing something full. But the puzzles is the third angle of the triangle. I struggle with the most. I find definitely.
The last category is called the fighter.
Yeah.
And it describes them as the players who like to, essentially, I'm paraphrasing because I put the book down, kick the tar out of your big bads and enjoy the narrative aspect of the combats and stuff like that. And that is kind of somewhere that you're going to find yourself, like that's clearly one of the inner circles where like the optimizer and the like role player or whatever find themselves, because enjoying the combat but for the story of it is a really interesting and unique twist. I think that a lot of people find themselves a little bit more on the side of hitting big numbers and stuff like that, doing big rolls, clickety-clacking the dice. But enjoying the narrative of the story, that's cool, that's fun. And they're also going to be the ones who give you the sickest how do you want to do this is for when you're finishing off a baddie.
It's like if the actor and the optimizer had a baby.
Totally.
Really.
And
exactly. I find myself like that's kind of where I find myself identifying, because as much as like I like to optimize, but I also don't like to sit there and like really like I'm not coming up with the best solution. I'm coming up with a decent or good solution for something, and a lot of the time I'm optimizing something narratively rather than mechanically. Like again, bringing up my character Murdoch, one of the things that I specifically identify him with is very, very high perception. I've given him a decent, not game breaking, but high passive perception. But also every single Eldritch invocation that I've picked for him has been perception based. I can see through walls. I have dark vision, even though I'm a human. I have the ability to read all languages, like things like that. All of them are based on basically his perception. And so in a way I'm optimizing, but not number go up sort of way, because I've decided he is a perceptive person and I am optimizing towards that. But again, that's sort of the narrative behind the character and optimizing towards that. But also when it comes down to like actual combat, the thing I think one of the most satisfying things is doing the combat and then coming up with a cool creative solution, but seeing how that unfolds within the combat is probably one of the coolest things. Like, it's not merely casting fireball and getting a lot of people. It is the casting of fireball and using it in a cool way that actually does something or affects the world. It's like,
that's exactly what I was actually about to say too. Is the best way to satisfy these kinds of players is to make those interactive maps that we've talked a little bit about. I think we'll probably end up talking about it another time as well. But interactive maps where things happen and shifts and changes and stuff like that, because that tells a story about the combat more than like you're in a circle and this guy smacks you for 17 and you smack him for 19 like,
and that goes back and forth.
Things change and happen, and the combat is a story in itself.
For like an example I can think of that I've kind of always wanted to put in, but I just never have had the instance to, is like, instead of there's a 3 people grouped up kind of in the center of the room and you're in like some sort of cathedral or something like that. It's like, I could throw my dagger at one of the dudes, or I could throw my dagger at the chandelier above, slicing the chandelier down and providing falling onto all 3 of them and doing bludgeoning damage. Like, the creative solutions to do with the environment are such a cool thing about D&D.
Yeah.
And something I think people struggle with, because again, it's kind of like the puzzles,
Yeah.
where since it's theater of the mind, you kind of
Yeah.
tunnel vision on the things they've mentioned. And so it's kind of a good exercise to ask in the middle of combat clarification questions
Yeah.
to your
Yeah,
DM,
absolutely.
or like environmental questions like, hey, is there any fire around? Maybe
Yeah.
if I cast a spell that creates like a flammable gas, or hey, I have that oil that's in my bag of holding, or that dead gnome.
Yeah.
What are things you can do to the environment that are going to be more impactful
Yeah.
than merely anything you can do? And that's my favorite freaking thing about
Yeah,
the game.
totally. Not all of your encounters need to be combat, and not all of your combat encounters need to be strictly combat.
Yeah.
Like you can have, like let's say that you're being harassed by just spitballing, like some imps.
Yeah.
That are like harassing you as you're trying to traverse this series of wooden and rope bridges above a high chasm.
Yeah.
Like you can kill these guys or you can book it, but like they're now this other thing that like that they're your combat.
Yeah.
But it's not just them you're focusing on. Like these bridges are fragile. Like
Yeah.
we need to get across them before these guys burn them down or whatever. Like
Or even choosing to cut them yourself and then just hold on for dear life.
yeah, also viable.
like-
You're like maybe you're being chased by something and you want to do, I don't know, it feels like a Sinbad moment. I don't remember if this happened in Sinbad, but
Yeah.
like so instead of allowing them to follow you up, you grab onto the bridge, cut it, and then swing down with it, right?
Yeah.
And then now your tail is
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think what you might be thinking of is a moment at the very beginning. If y'all want to find like a perfect example of this, of fighting a creature that in this example is way too big for you to fight, and looking around for something in the environment that's going to help you, watch the first scene. Watch the first scene, and I think it's the first scene. It's the very, very beginning of the movie. If you can find it somewhere, watch the scene where the this sort of kraken character or beast attacks the ship at the very, very beginning, and just watch that play out, and you'll see exactly what we're talking about.
That's in Sinbad?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. I think it's actually, I'm not sure if I think it's DreamWorks actually, not Disney. It might be Disney. Either way, it's one of the D's.
Anyway, we're talking interesting mechanics, things
Yeah.
that impact the situation, things that the situation impacts, secondary win conditions, things
Yeah.
like that, things that aren't just your rolling numbers and saying does that hit kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think that covers all of them.
That's all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've been listening to us long-windedly talk about this for a long time, but we appreciate you tuning in. So this has been Simply Rambling. If you want to, like, comment, and subscribe, we would really, really appreciate that. And in a lot of episodes, we'll actually feature comments, so
Yeah.
keep that in mind, and that's likely going to be coming up right in a few minutes here.
Yeah.
But either way, thank you again, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.